Hi, and welcome to the Corporate Warriors podcast. My name is Fela, and in this episode, I'm going to talk with Jackie Espada, an employee that turned entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about the unique and important skill of thinking like an entrepreneur in order for you to advance in your career quicker. So, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, what it is all about, how to translate the things that you can learn as an entrepreneur within companies as an intrapreneur, and how you can benefit in your career from having the right mindset. So I'm really looking forward to this episode. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about the traps, about the mindset shifts, about some tips how you can actually get there. And we try to make it really, really interesting for you so that all of you can benefit from the insights that Jackie has in order to advance in your career quicker. Welcome, Jackie, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. So Jackie is a ex-corporate employee that went entrepreneur. And today in this episode, we're going to talk about intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship and how it can help you also to excel and advance in your career quicker. So Jackie, so great that you're here. The first question that I always ask is, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more? And also, in addition to that, give us some background information about your professional journey so far.
Absolutely. So back when I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to help people. And I initially thought that I was going to become a sports and entertainment attorney. And went down the path, got my 4-year degree and applied to 11 different law schools and didn't get into any of them. So I thought, okay, well, what can I do now? Because I can't reapply for law school for another 2 years. So from there, I worked a few different jobs, still in the realm of helping people, whether it be retail or being a substitute teacher in an elementary school, and eventually working in the legal field as a legal assistant. It was then that I realized that the legal field was not for me. And decided that, maybe it was during the pandemic and people were making their own money from home by becoming entrepreneurs, whether it be creating their own, products or starting their own service-based businesses. And so I decided to dip my toes into that and created an organic skincare line. And initially I thought, cool, let's do this. We're going to, get into it. And it turns out that it wasn't as profitable as I thought it was, like as I had conceived it. So eventually I needed to get my own job, and so that I could consistently make more money. I did the skincare stuff for a bigger company that was basically doing the same thing that I was, but like I said, at a larger scale. I was faced with toxic bosses at every turn, whether it be, people who weren't listening to what would make processes more efficient or, things like that. And I ended up leaving that job with that skincare company and worked for a third-party marketing company, where, again, I was faced with these toxic bosses, and they sent me on a journey to Memphis to sell these grills that they don't need in Memphis. And that's when I was like, enough is enough. So from there, I decided that, I knew what it was like to face these toxic bosses and wanted to help other people because I knew I wasn't alone. I, searched and searched on the internet for somebody who could help me with what I was going through and couldn't find anybody. So I decided to be that somebody. So now I help people make the transition from corporate careers to becoming an entrepreneur. And I've been in business for a little over a year now, and I don't see myself ever going back to the corporate world.
Wow, that's quite a journey. So basically, at every stage of your professional career, you encounter toxic bosses. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had, whether it be, it wasn't, it was just different scales of toxicity. So it was the boss that had done things a certain way for 30 years because she had been in the profession for 30 years and didn't want to deviate from the way that she knew, or, toxic bosses in the sense that they wanted to have this company, but they didn't want to have to put in the work themselves. They would rather hire somebody else to do all of the work for them, and then when we brought our questions and concerns to them, they would just kind of write us off. And then there was other bosses that just completely ignored you. So it just like different levels of toxicity. But yeah, I all of my bosses have been toxic in some type of way.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's horrible.
Yeah.
So, did you early on then already understand that for you, your personal way out, your exit strategy has to be entrepreneurship, or did you already, like before, also consider other things for you?
I definitely considered other things. That's why I had tried these other different professions and niches of jobs. Um, so I knew that I had options. I just wasn't sure which option was going to be the most beneficial for me.
Mm. And how did you figure that out? Do you remember like what your journey was there?
So it was just it was trial and error, really. So I would give it a chance. The longest that I spent at a job was over like 4 years. And then the smallest amount of time was 2 or 3 months. So it just like it ranged. I had to give it some time to be able to marinate and see if that was what I was actually going to be able to do.
Yeah. And how did you find out about entrepreneurship? It might sound, funny if you think about it now, but many people don't even consider being their own boss, right? If they face toxic managers or bad work environment. So, how did you get there from being an employee to being like, I could do that on my own?
Yeah, so I initially, like I said, the pandemic really did bring a lot out of people, where I saw people trying to make money because they were laid off from their jobs, or they were working from home so they had more time on their hands. So a lot of people were just trying it out by making their handmade goods and services, and just trying to make money other ways. And so I was like, okay, well, let's try it out. I don't really recall anybody in my family ever really being an entrepreneur. So it wasn't something that was super relevant to me until the pandemic happened and I saw other people doing it.
That's so interesting how the pandemic that was really so tough also on many people, on just society as a whole, but at the same time it brought in so many new perspectives as well. So it's like already a great probably pave way to the next question, which would be more about what does it really actually mean if you were for yourself, right, just very individually to define what it means to be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, how would you describe that?
So for me, I feel like being an entrepreneur means more than just starting a business, right? So it's about identifying opportunities where others see challenges, or taking calculated risks and creating value in innovative ways. So that's that. When I think of an entrepreneur, I don't think of somebody who just owns a business. I think of somebody who, isn't afraid to take the risks and seek out opportunities, and just be really like innovative, and just try new things to see what works.
Yeah, wow. So that's basically also the complete common ground of entrepreneur and intrapreneur, right? So for just for the audience, for the people that are not really used to those names and definitions, so an intrapreneur is basically a person acting like an entrepreneur, but within a corporation, within an already established existing business. They can own something if it's like a startup, and you have the possibility to have some stock vesting options. But besides that, the mindset is really the same, right? How would you describe it?
No, I describe it the same way. I think it's exactly spot on the way you said it.
Okay, great. And how was it for you? So, do you think that just as a personality, you always were more prone to taking some calculated risks? Like, there's so much to that, right? It sounds really easy. Just take some calculated risks and trial and error. But how was it for you? Was there a process behind it to get there?
Definitely. There like I was the safe child that
Mm.
wouldn't, most people wouldn't even know that I was crying because I would just be under a table, and you would know because you would see the tears streaming down my face. So for me, like I'm super introverted, to be doing what I'm doing now. If you were to tell me that 10 years ago, I would not believe it. because it really was a journey. It took, putting myself out there little by little to be able to be like, okay, enough is enough. I can't keep doing this. So it was literally like, I guess the analogy I would use is like breaking down a wall. You can't just break down the whole wall. You have to do it piece by piece, just little knock by little knock until you get there, until the whole wall is crumbling down.
What was like, did you have then, also considering the wall, like a breakthrough moment where you remember that was the moment where the wall just vanished for you completely?
Yeah, so for me, it was the attorney that I was working for. She was trying so hard to be my mom. And I'm like, I don't need you to be my mom. She was pushing me to go to law school and to, try these different opportunities to become a lawyer. And I'm like, you're not my mom. I don't want this. I knew at that moment that I no longer wanted to work in the legal field, that enough was enough. And I was like, okay, this is going to be my opportunity to try to do other things. So that's when I decided for Christmas, my mom got me a Cricut machine and I was like, let's try it out. So that, I think that was like the culminating moment of, you know, getting the Cricut machine, working with this toxic boss who was trying to, just being overbearing. And I was like, okay, enough.
It's interesting. So one way of you to experience toxic bosses was in both directions. So either like not caring or over caring.
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's what I was saying. Like it just came in different
Mhm.
spectrums of being on the toxic scale.
Wow, very interesting. And then once the wall has been broken down, did you then, even after that moment, experience major shifts in your own mindset and how you approach things?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that if I wanted to be successful, that I would have to keep putting myself out there and keep pushing myself. And I was nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. Like I was super nervous. I didn't think that I was going to succeed, but then I realized that if I wanted to succeed, I needed to embrace the mindset that I could and I would. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am right now. I would be stuck in these situations where my boss would be talking down to me or just continuing to belittle me in a way that just I would keep taking it.
Mhm. So it was really also a journey about personal empowerment in some way. When you were
Yes.
talking about putting yourself out there, I was also thinking very much about the personal branding aspect to a career where people are also very much afraid of putting themselves out there on LinkedIn, which is pretty similar as well. So it's not even only about being intrapreneur without an incorporation, but even also just using the mindset and applying in different variables that all influence your career in some way, no matter if you're an entrepreneur or if you want to stay in corporations because you perhaps like it because there's more teamwork to it, right? So is there anything that you're missing right now where you're like, sometimes I think back and I'm like, it would be nice to have, the nice coffee machine at the office and the possibility to just go to the next desk and ask my favorite coworker to have a 5 minute coffee break together, something like that.
I definitely feel, that loneliness from time to time because it's just me. I'm working on my business by myself. But to combat that, especially in the last like few months, I've just been really vocal about it on my social media and just being like, "Hey, I need a friend. I need somebody to talk to. Can we just like be coworkers for the day?" And I've noticed that a lot of people are in that same boat. Entrepreneurs feel lonely. They, are experiencing this disconnect because they're working every day by themselves. So I've been scheduling, phone calls with people just to like catch up and like you said, just like grab a coffee with your coworker. And just talk to them. And it's definitely helped. I've noticed that on weeks when I don't have these co-working sessions scheduled or these coffee chats scheduled, that those are the times when I feel like I'm on the verge of having a mental breakdown.
Wow. So is there anything else if like nobody's available? What do you do?
At that point, I will usually leave my house and go work in a coffee shop because then at that point I'll have the interaction of having, I may not talk to anybody that is around, but at least I have like the feeling of being in a place where there are other people that if I wanted to, I could go and talk to like the Starbucks employee and just like, have a quick conversation there and still get that human connection.
Now, that's also a great tip for remote workers, right? That are
Hmm.
only at home all the time. So that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. And also for sharing, obviously, the harder times. I mean, no matter what you decide in your career, if you decide to switch your career from corporate to entrepreneurship, there's gonna be ups and downs, right? And we're not here to lie about that and and tell people that everything's gonna great just because you won't have a manager anymore. It's also not true. There's new challenges that need to be tackled. And the
Absolutely.
one thing is that you don't have the monthly salary coming in, but you need to actively, you know, do something for that to happen. And it's not going to be regular. It might be a big sum at once and then nothing for a few months, or like however it goes and however the business model is as well. But there's more to it. Also, the mental health topics as well, of being alone at home most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that comes to your mind that we want to share with people that would be relevant? And then we can see in whatever corporate context we can put that as well.
Sure. I definitely feel like being an entrepreneur comes with its challenges, but I would celebrate everything.
Mhm.
Everything that you can, whether it be, getting a new email subscriber or, something like that, like something that you don't typically you look over in the corporate world, you want to celebrate in the entrepreneur world. And even in the corporate world, you can celebrate those too. You can celebrate, having a successful 5-minute call with a new client or securing a new deal with a new partner. Like you can celebrate, and I think that that will change the outlook on everybody's work situation, whether it be in the entrepreneur world or the corporate world. Celebrating those successes are going to make the next one come sooner.
Oh, make him come sooner. Is that what you experienced?
Yeah, yeah, because it's like it's almost like the manifestation thing where if you constantly see these good things happening, more things are going to be attracted to you.
Wow, that's cool. That's interesting. I love it. Yeah, and I think it's so funny because it's so a normal kind of piece of advice, right? Once you go into mindset, personal development, professional development, it's like have this success sheet or success document, whatever it is, where you just note down the successes.
Hmm.
And it's still because you like have to do it in some way in order to have the sheet, right? There's so much resistance to it. And I was just recognizing it this morning. I had a client and he was like, oh yeah, and I also did this for them and that. And I was like, yeah, you forgot because you didn't start your success sheet, right? That's
Yeah.
exactly why we need that. Because even if there's like a situation all of a sudden coming up at the job and you need to defend yourself in some way, whatever it is, even if it's not just in front of yourself, which is more what you're describing as an entrepreneur, or even a corporation, could even be in front of your boss. Let's say one thing didn't go well, you have a list of 20 things that you did in addition for the company that were great successes, and it will put everything into perspective. So
Exactly.
I think that's super powerful. And just also to share from my side, I felt the same way starting off with this business, and then I was like, the digital one is not gonna cut it for me because I was really trying to build up everything from scratch, and it was so hard and was so tough. So I have my success sheet on my fridge. So
I
whenever
love
something
that.
positive happens, I put on a post-it note saying I did this, or like this happened, this success. So basically every time I'm in the kitchen, I have to look at it. Or if people come over, they're like asking what it is. So it forces me to talk about it and not like also have this weird mindset of like not talking about successes and only talking about what's not going well because you don't want to show off. So I think, it's like a whole thing, but I feel that it's a really powerful technique if people actually do it.
Absolutely. And even for my clients, I tell them all the time, I say, look, it could be as simple as getting out of bed. That is a success because there's some people who honestly can't. And you have to be grateful for the little things that you can do. And you'll see as soon as you start being grateful for everything, more things, bigger and better things are going to be coming your way for you to be even more grateful.
Oh, that is great. And the next question would have been also about the traps. So it could be vice versa, right? A trap not to monitor and acknowledge really your successes. Does anything else come to your mind when you think of what are the potential traps of more becoming and thinking and acting like an entrepreneur or intrapreneur?
Definitely the fear of failure is the number one thing that I always think of. I know that people are super hesitant to take risks and pursue their passions due to the fear of just falling short. However, I feel like the failure is not the opposite, but it's actually a stepping stone to that next success.
Mhm.
So it's, if your venture doesn't pan out as expected, instead of dwelling on that setback, I I would suggest you just use that as a learning experience for the future. So basically taking what you learned from this little piece and seeing how you can pivot and make adjustments so that it becomes a success in the future.
And for the people that really struggle with that, do you have any specific tips or anything that you tell them to do, how they can get there?
I basically tell them to take a step back. Basically take a step outside of their situation. Don't pretend like the whole world is depending on this one thing. See yourself as somebody else and see how you can, look at what went wrong, but also look at what went right. So then from there, you're able to make a new plan and a new blueprint for your next mission.
Mhm. So basically, really forcing them to what you normally call start from experience, not see it as a failure, but this time you start from experience. This time you already know what's not working. So you're already like 10% closer to your goal potentially.
Exactly.
Nice. And do you feel there's a lot of resistance if you go give these kinds of tips to people or help them go that way? Is there a lot of like additional negative beliefs that keep them from doing the steps, or is it more about they have the support, they feel like they have a backup partner with you, so they're more courageous?
I I think that they do have there is some hesitancy
Mm.
initially. And I think it just takes practice. I think they need to be able to see the success to believe that it's able for them. Like it's a thing that is actually going to happen. So if let's say I decided that tomorrow I want to create I don't know, like a new product or service, right? And you don't think that it's going to do well, you realize that you launched it, but you failed to meet certain checkpoints for this launch. And you're like, okay, you take a step back and you're like, what can I do differently to be able to reach those milestones that I set for myself? And I think at that point, just, having that failure under your belt and using the entrepreneur mindset of, okay, it's okay to fail. It's okay that I didn't do what I wanted to do, but how can I improve? And always viewing everything as an improving moment. Even when you do succeed, how can you improve on that? And that works even in the corporate world as well, as using it as a learning tool instead of a reason to sit there and complain.
What about potentially, also I'm just imagining the fear of failure. I guess in one side it's like just a fear of probably not being enough, not being good enough, and basically feeling like you lose in comparison to others, which is probably already part of the problem, that you're comparing yourself constantly. But then it's, I guess, also that potentially people will notice, even if it's just family and friends. You put yourself out there, you make this big step, and then perhaps it doesn't work. It could be also for entrepreneurs or for people working in corporations. Let's say they get a huge promotion at a new company, and they already know that people might doubt if they're actually able to do it, right? So it's the same thing. You put it out there on LinkedIn, and then it's there, and then you feel this pressure in the back of your neck that you have to perform now, because there might be people out there that will be talking behind your back, will say, what does she or he think they're able to do now, and they want to keep you small because it keeps themselves at a comparatively nice level. So Any thoughts on that, or any tips that you would give a client that has this fear?
I would say to just block out the noise. Basically, you know how horses have the blinders on?
Yes.
Be so focused on your goals that you don't worry about what other people are saying or doing. Make your goals the most important thing that you ever have in your life. You see them every day, like whether you like post sticky notes on your mirror while you're getting ready in the morning and as you're getting ready to go to sleep at night. Constantly reflect on them because those are going to be your driving force to get to where you want to go. Whether it be getting a, 100 or $10,000 promotion at work, or, starting a new company and making $100,000 in a year with that business. Having those goals that you are able to visualize and see every day and blocking out all of the noise is definitely going to help you get there.
That's great. Yeah, that's some great tips. And I think just in general, a great tip for personal development, because whenever you change, whenever you make the step ahead, no matter what it is, it could even be that you're super young but already decide to have a family, but nobody else does. Whenever you do not go with the flow, whenever you do not do what everybody is doing, you basically put yourself out there already. It's really interesting. Thank you for that. So we've talked a lot about becoming an entrepreneur and entrepreneurship in general, but is there some specific pieces of advice or thoughts that you want to give to people that think like it sounds interesting, but I want to stay in the corporate field right now? What can we say about intrapreneurship in that regard? That is very more specific, let's say.
Yeah. So if you're not ready to take the leap into entrepreneurship, that is totally okay. There are plenty of people who either work in a corporate setting and that's for them. That is 100% for them and there's nothing wrong with that. But you can still adapt the entrepreneur mindset into things that you do in your corporate world. You can still embrace being an innovator. You can still embrace being someone who is, willing to take risks. It just is going to translate differently because you're not doing it for yourself. So it's not as risky. You can still do it in these settings and still be okay with it.
Do you have some specific examples just for people that are new to the topic? How could it look like? Like if I
So,
decide I want to try it, it sounds kind of interesting, but there's everything already there. There's already the structures there. I have my boss. The boss perhaps doesn't want me to go into many different directions. They give a very clear cut, direction of that. Those are the projects, and this is the rest doesn't concern you, perhaps. Like what is it that you would tell them?
I would say look at the day-to-day. Look at the systems that have been put in place. Is there a way for you to maybe enhance the day-to-day systems? Is there a way to make it more efficient? Is there a way to just honestly make it more efficient? If there's ways to do that, start working on it. Start making a new system. So let's say, like, for me, as an example that I had gone through, was when I was working for the attorney, we would have to do discovery documents. And there was a certain way that she wanted the discovery documents to be um, scanned into the computer and then put into folders so that she could then go and view all of the folders. And if we needed to send them out to anybody, she was able to do that. There was a way that she was doing it that was so inefficient that just really made no sense. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, how can I make this more efficient? How can I make it in a way that is going to benefit not only her, but is going to make my job easier? So if there think of ways to make your job easier by doing things that a different way, I think would be the first step in corporate world to be able to embrace that entrepreneur mindset.
So basically, that's a great tip how to manage your manager, right? If they're not open for
Yes.
new things, you surprise them perhaps in a one-on-one meeting and be like, hey, I know this wasn't part of my task. I did it in addition. Just want to present it to you real quick. And then you have the buy-in and you can hopefully, win them over with just your short presentation of your improved process or whatnot. So that's really interesting. Do you feel that corporations these days, they are really looking for people that have this kind of mentality or mindset?
Absolutely. I think, especially with the way that our world is changing in the digital age, I think people are looking for ways to make jobs more efficient or, making jobs just easier on the day to day so that they're not having to do a whole lot of work. Because I mean, we have computers now, we can do things a lot quicker, we can be connected with people a lot quicker. So I think it is something that corporations are looking for because they're not having to spend as much money if the job is easier and quicker to do.
Yeah. So that is great. Yeah, and I fully agree. It's even like new tools are coming out left and right, and um, even as employee, but even more so as a manager, so hard to keep track of things. And you might miss out on a huge lot of potential if you don't have a person in your team, perhaps, that is really interested in these things and is curious enough to test it out for you. It could be a great advantage. So I fully agree. Um, Also, what I find really interesting, since I come for like the last company I worked for was a startup or scale up rather, that you said this approach to failing forward is also something that is really embraced there, which is like oftentimes referred to as test and scale. But really what it is that you scale the things that work, and in the name test and scale, you don't say that 90% of the stuff doesn't work and you don't scale it. And you only scale like the 10% that actually do work. But that's the whole thing, right? I was on a talk at an event where somebody from Spotify was talking, and they said that they tested out the whole interface, and they were just doing that, like exactly measuring what everybody's clicking and not clicking, making small changes and measuring, does it work better now or worse? If it was X% better, then yes, that's what we do. So they made the change and then they tested again, and that's how they improved their interface like crazy. Whereas other competitors were perhaps slower, and already that gave them so much more reach and so many more customers. So I think that's really great that we have a lot of parallels here. And I fully agree. So a lot of people that I know that work in startups or scale ups are now working in bigger corporations. And I think there's a big need for people that are not afraid to speak up, to have ideas, and to try to improve the operations side as well. Because I don't know how you see that, but especially the real big corporations, they have a lot of processes. They need them to function, but then also it slows them down, and they will be more reluctant for change sometimes, because even for change, there's like 20 processes on how to initiate change. So what I also had another employer that I was working for was they had like a continuous improvement process specifically set in place so that managers, they had to respond to potential improvement within their department in 48 hours. They
Oh,
were
wow.
forced to do that by HR. And I think that's a great example of how companies start to really appreciate the entrepreneurship more, and they even force their managers, because they know they're so booked out day to day. They sometimes don't want to hear anything new, not because they're toxic, but because they're already running at 150% capacity. And then everything that's new, they're like, please just leave this process as it is.
Yep.
So that might also be a way to use those kinds of processes. If you have that in your current corporation, that perhaps there are already processes in place that help intrapreneurs to show their value. No.
Absolutely. You never know. And you can be the one that makes the change. If that's something that is not there currently, you can be the one that implements it and starts bringing it forward.
Yes, totally. And then already that is a big thing on your success document, right? That you can take into the
Exactly.
next net salary negotiation. So that's a great thing. What else do you think we should mention for people that are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs? Are there specific risks also that come with that?
Um, yeah, probably. I know that, I mean, when it comes to being an entrepreneur or intrapreneur, it is a whole lot of mindset work.
Hmm.
That's the number one thing is if you have the right mindset, you can achieve anything. So I would suggest that anybody, there's podcasts out there, there's books that you can read. There's YouTube TED Talks and just there's resources out there that are free that you're able to consume if you're looking to become the number one entrepreneur in the corporate world or the number one entrepreneur in whatever field you want to be in.
Yeah, that's a great paveway again to my last question. So it would be, how can people reach out to you? What kind of resource do you offer? So I guess there's also a lot of inspiration there on your side.
Absolutely. So Right now, I mainly post on Instagram, and my handle is it's.jackie.espada. And you can find me there. I post stuff all the time about becoming an entrepreneur. But I have two main ways for you to work with me. One of them is doing a strategy call with me where we will deep dive into whatever business idea you have. If you don't have one, we can, find an avenue for you. I do have like freebies and stuff that offer different side hustle ideas if you're not ready to take the full leap into entrepreneurship yet, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people start with having just a side hustle and building that side hustle while they're still in their corporate job to have that steady income from corporate and then be able to slowly make that transition. So I'm here to help you, hold your hand as you make that transition. And, if you do have a business idea, but aren't really necessarily sure of where to start with that, I have the Entrepreneur Starter Pack, which basically offers you business templates for you to, get started on your products and ideas and services and branding. And there also is a mindset workbook in there that is going to help you embrace that entrepreneur mindset as well.
Great. Well, that sounds amazing. I'm gonna make sure that it's gonna be linked on YouTube. And yeah, any additional last thoughts, anything else that you would like to share, Jackie?
I just want everybody to know that they should feel like they are valued in their workplace, whether it be in a corporate setting or if you're becoming your own boss. You should feel valued. You should feel important because you are. You bring something of value to the table, and you should feel like you are.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie. It was
Thank
great
you.
having you here.